Oh dear, it appears that you have clicked on my video, and that can only mean one thing. You're looking for a track guide at Ellough Park, because you're terrible at driving. So here it is. So here's how this video is going to work. We're going to break this up into 3 sections. Section 1, a quick hot lap of Ellough Park. Section 2, a breakdown of that hot lap and how I drive that hot lap. And then section 3, how to overtake at every single corner on the circuit. Let's go. So let's break down this hot lap one corner at a time and just highlight everything. So going on to the brakes, we're braking just before this little piece of tarmac on the left. Now, I'm not a driver who likes to look at anything when figuring out where to brake. I like to just look at the corner and then brake. And everyone's kind of different. Some people like to be visual and see things. Other people just like to feel the car. So this is kind of where I'm braking. Obviously, you've got your car all the way over to the left, and just like the driver in front of me as well, you want to use that little bit of extra tarmac on the left-hand side of the circuit. So as we slowly play forward, you'll see that I'm still all the way over to the left. I've got my left tyre a little bit over that white line, just so that we can open up the corner as much as possible. And just rolling forward a little bit, one of the big things is where you are going to hit your apex. And you can see that the difference between me and the driver in front is I take a slightly later apex through turn 1. A lot of people like to carry a bit too much speed, in my opinion, into the opening corner. And I feel like you lose a lot of time on exit. This curb through turn 1 is so important because it sucks the kart in. And it essentially gives you extra grip, and it means you can carry a little bit more speed. So step 1, make sure you take all of the curb. Step 2, get a nice late apex through the corner. The later the apex, kind of the better. Obviously, you don't want it to be too late. So I get a nice late apex, and you can see just where I'm hooking that curb. And the bit where I've completely hooked over the curb, the driver in front has already started to let the kart out. Theoretically, his line is better than mine, but practically, I find that this line works a little bit better. I'm just carrying a little bit more speed through the corner, and you'll see as we just wind the footage out coming out of the corner just how much more speed I carry. You can also use all of this circuit on the outside of the circuit. However, I don't necessarily recommend it. You don't need to get the kart to come out really wide. And if you do, you'll find yourself hitting this stack of tyre barriers over here. So even if you come out wide, you'll have to drag the kart back over to the right to avoid hitting that. And as a result, you'll lose loads of time. So you kind of want to come out over the white line, but not too far out. So we've got a really good exit. We've gained time coming out of that corner. We're now in the slipstream, and we're going to pause because I just want to show where my car is heading into this corner. Again, you're all the way on the left-hand side, but keep an eye on my right foot. You can see that at the moment, it is still fully planted. I'm still fully on the throttle. But if we slowly wind the footage forward, you can see, again, I'm still fully on the throttle, and only now have I started to come off the throttle and go onto the brakes. This right hand, a lot of people might want to slow down very early for and take it like a traditional corner. You don't want to do that. You want to point your kart directly towards the apex and then get on the brakes. You don't need to take the curb either. So as we go further forward, you can see that left foot is still on the brake pedal, and I'm still aiming towards the apex. Now, the difference between what I'm doing and what the driver in front is doing, although I might eat my words in a second, is he's taking this corner a little bit more traditionally, like trying to get a nice line through. I'm still kind of pointing in towards the apex. So I'm coming in a little bit shallower. And that has meant that I've been able to get onto the brakes a little bit later, and I'm going to gain loads of time going into the corner. Again, you can use that curb. I have used that curb in the past. I think with this double right-hander, because of how fast you can go in, it's best to aim for the curb. And if you then brake a little bit too late and miss the apex, you still get a really good line through the corner. I don't think you need to take that apex for it to be good. But if you go into a corner like turn 1, for example, and you miss the apex, you lose loads of time. I'm talking like 2/10, maybe even 3/10 through that one corner. If you aim for the apex here and aim for the curb, and you miss the curb, you lose not even a 10th. So I feel like this is a corner that really rewards you for being super aggressive and going in as hard as you can into the corner. Now that we've got the apex, it's all about just trying to keep the kart nice and tight. So we'll play the footage forward again. And you can see that I'm not coming out too wide. You can see this central kind of strip of tarmac where the tarmac has been joined together. That's where the middle of my kart is. I don't want to come out too wide, because if I come out wide, I'm essentially going to have to spend a lot more time in getting the kart rotated. And if I've got to spend that time getting the kart rotated, I'm essentially losing time to get the kart turned for the next part of the corner. So I'm holding it a little bit tighter, obviously not super tight. And then as we wind the footage forward, look how much time I'm gaining. So the driver in front went out a little bit wider, has to get that kart rotated a little bit more. He should theoretically get a better exit coming out of this corner now, because his kart is better positioned than mine. But I've gained so much time coming in, and this corner is still really fast regardless. So I don't lose that much time on exit, and you'll see that all play out here. Now, this apex, as we wind forward, is really important to get, and you can see that even though the driver in front angled their kart a little bit better, there's just not enough grip through that corner. And I will say, this is driving the CLUB100 karts. I don't know what it's like in the rental karts. I don't know what it's like if you do own it. Well, I've done BPEC here in pro karts, and I drive relatively similarly. But it is different. So this is a CLUB100 guide first and foremost, but you can see just how much curb I get. Now this curb you have to get. I said before that you can carry loads of speed through that first right-hander of this double right-hander. So through turn 2 you can miss the apex, but through turn 3 you have to get this apex. It is really important. Again, it holds the kart in, and then as we play the footage, I'm fully on the power, and you don't need to go all the way out onto this curb. If you get this double right-hander right, you will not find the kart just swinging out like crazy, and you won't have to fight the kart to keep it on the track limits. You can come out onto this red and white curb, you can even go a tiny bit over the line, but you shouldn't find yourself having to go any wider than that. And you can see just how much time I have gained through the double right-hander, and it's usually where I'm really, really quick. That is where I gain most of my time compared to everyone else. But playing the footage again on the power, you can see, I'm just going to pause it here. You can see I've lost a bit of time. So despite everything, you know, I carried loads of speed in. I got the apex. Because I came in a little bit shallower, I did lose time. But I've not lost as much time as I had initially gained from taking that tighter line. So I think the line is still good. That's how I would take it, and obviously there are fine tweaks. This isn't necessarily the perfect lap, so maybe I could have gone a little bit wider. Maybe I could have got a bit more curb going into the first of the double right-handers. But we're going to go into this left hairpin now, and this is one where I'm not the best. It's probably my weakest corner on the circuit, but you can see my left foot is onto the brakes, and I've started braking, well, essentially there's a few reference points. You can see where the concrete's starting on the right. You can see where the white lines are. Again, I don't use any of these references. I just brake when I kind of feel like, which means that I'm a little bit inconsistent sometimes. I think you can brake really hard going into this corner. The important thing is, just like if you've ever been to right house, it's just like right house hairpin. One, you want to be super late on the brakes, but you want to get that kart rotated before you get to the apex. You don't want to turn in normally, because I feel like the CLUB100 karts will bog down. If you're racing in owner karts, you're doing Rotaxes or TKMs, you can probably be a lot more aggressive going into this corner. But in a CLUB100 kart, it's all about the exit. So nice and late on the brakes, and you can see where I start turning in. It's pretty much from the white and red curb. If I didn't have a driver in front of me, I probably would have been a little bit later on the brakes and just got the back end out a tiny bit just to help me slow down. But because there is a driver in front of me, I'm just taking that little bit of extra caution going into this corner. So I'll just play the footage forward a tiny bit, and you can see how my kart is angled, right? I've already got most of the turning done. I'm not essentially going out to the right at this point. I haven't turned in early. It's all about getting an exit. It's about getting the engine engaged as early as you can to get the drive out of the corner. And you want to get the curb. If these cones aren't here, in BPEC, the cones aren't there, you don't want to take all the curb, because I find that it slows the kart down, because even though your inside tires are a little bit lifted off the ground, it does just drop in and unsettle the car. So I don't like it. But you can see that we've absolutely nailed the apex. And I probably could have opened up the steering a little bit earlier, maybe got on the power a little bit earlier. As I mentioned before, this isn't necessarily a perfect lap, but this is how I think you should drive a lap. And I think all of the lines are pretty much spot on. So on the power here, and we'll play the footage again, you can use up all of this tarmac on the exit of the track, this painted red and white line. Obviously, you might be in a race series that doesn't allow this, so always be careful in driver's briefing. Ask if you are allowed to use it. In Club 100, we were allowed to go fully over this as long as we didn't hit the tire barriers. So don't start putting out in the comments that I cheated and used too much circuit or extended track limits. I wasn't. This was explicitly said that we were allowed to do. So on the power, we've got a good exit, and we're in the slipstream. Now, this left-hander is a tricky one, so I'm going to pause, and you can see how early I'm turning in. Now, if you just looked at this track, you'd probably think that you have to turn in a little bit later, but you can see the difference in colouring of the tarmac in front of us. You can see that we are on the dark line. This is the racing line. And the reason for this is this circuit you understeer like crazy. And there's a really important thing as we play the footage forward, which is this curb. The driver in front has, I would say, probably taken a little bit too much curb, but they actually came out better than me. You want to use this curb. This curb it's nice and raised on the center, which means that if you get your left-hand side over the curb, it just helps keep the car stuck in. If you miss this curb, you're going to have to lift, maybe even dab on the brakes. So it is really, really important that you get over this curb, because it will hold your kart in. And on exit, as we play the footage out, you'll notice that I come out a tiny bit wider than the driver in front. If you get that curb, it stops your kart from going all the way out wide, which means that you're traveling less distance, and you're probably actually traveling a little bit quicker as well. So that curb is really, really important to use. You have to use it, and it'll keep your kart nice and tight on exit. Obviously, don't force your kart to be tight coming out of the corner. Let it out, but you'll find that your kart doesn't need to go as wide as normal. Playing the footage forward, again, going into this right-hander, you can see that my kart is all the way over to the left-hand side of the circuit. You want to open up this corner as much as possible, and playing forward, you're going to use all of this concrete as you go through the right kink. Now, when we did BPEC, you can see the bit right in front of me, there was a bollard there. We would take the bollard as well. So that's why you can see a bollard shape there, because when we were doing British Pro Karts, we actually destroyed the bollard by going over it so many times. If there is a bollard there, then obviously you have to miss it and avoid it depending on the kart you're in. Some karts might be able to hit it, as was the case for us in BPEC. If it isn't there, this corner is completely flat. If you lift through this corner, you're a pansy. Get out of a go. I'm joking. If it takes you time to get used to taking this corner flat out, then so be it. But your goal should be to take this corner flat out, at least in the dry. So we're going to come through the right-hander, and then going into the next right-hander. This is a weird one, because depending on how you take that right, your kart will be in a slightly different position going into this corner, and you're going downhill. You can see that my left foot is already on the brake pedal. So as soon as you come out of that right-hander, if your kart hasn't gone out all the way to the left, it doesn't matter. You don't have time to readjust your kart positioning to go into this corner. I've sometimes come through that right-hander, and because my previous exit was bad, I've actually been on that curb on the left, which isn't where you want to be. Ideally, I should probably be a little bit more to the left, but I've just come out of a corner, so my kart is naturally pointing a little bit to the left-hand side of the circuit. So as we play forward and I get on the brakes, you'll notice that my kart starts to go into the pit entry line. So I'm in the right place now to turn into this right-hander. So even though I came out a little bit tight through that right-hander, I'm still in the right position here and now. And this is the critical bit. This is where you want your kart to be. It doesn't matter where your kart is beforehand. What matters is going into this corner, your kart is all the way on the left, you're using this pit entry, and you haven't compromised yourself. So we'll just roll forward a little bit, and you can see that we're going for a nice early apex. It's a long straight coming out of this corner. But it's very easy to think, oh, it's a long straight, let me get a late apex. No, you want to get an early apex, arguably even earlier than this. And I've done this sometimes. I've taken an earlier apex. What you don't want to do is outbrake yourself going into this corner. So it's better to aim to try to get that early apex. And then if you outbrake yourself, you can take a slightly later apex, like I'm doing here. But if you take an earlier apex, you'll come out a little bit wider. So we'll just play the footage, because this curb, I'll just pause again, this curb just holds the cart in really nicely, and it doesn't unsettle the cart. And as we come onto the power, you notice that we've got to bring the cart back over to the right-hand side. So if we take a slightly earlier apex, we'll carry a bit more speed, but then we'll have to scrub off a bit of speed, just pulling the cart back over to the right. So there's a sweet spot somewhere between where I got the apex, maybe a little bit earlier. Somewhere around there is where you want to get the apex. Get on the power super early. As soon as you hit that apex, before you hit that apex, you want to be on the power. You can have a little wind back and you can look at where my right foot is. You can see my toe. If you see that foot, that means I'm on the throttle. So you can see just how early I'm getting onto the power. But I've gone the power really early, and I haven't had to drag my cart to the right as much as the driver in front. So that's going to give me a tiny bit of a better exit. I'm going to have slipstream anyway, so that's going to help. And then there's this tyre barrier that we're just going to skim, and I'm going to pause again. You let the car all the way out to the right-hand side of the circuit coming out. You don't want to keep it to the left. You let that cart fly. Let it fly, girl. And then you bring the cart back over to the left, and you can see again how early I'm braking. I'm braking well before the red and white tyre stack. I'm sure there's probably some flags or something on the left that you can use as a marker or a reference point, but hard braking down into this corner. This is probably the biggest braking zone outside of hairpin 1 on the circuit, maybe even bigger than the right-hander, because this braking zone, I feel like it's a lot longer. I don't know, but it feels like one of the biggest braking zones. So again, on the brakes, and you can see where we're turning in from. So I've already started turning in a little bit. I find that in Club 100 carts, I don't want to take, the conventional wide line in, carry loads of speed like that. I like to point the cart towards an apex. So in this case, I'm pointing it a little bit more than the driver in front of me towards this corner. Whether that's better or not, I'll leave for you guys to decide. But we're going to play forward a little bit, and you can see that the driver in front, he's just had a little moment with the rear end. We don't have that, and as we get closer to the apex, because he had that moment and he had to catch that rear end, again, it's a tiny, tiny, subtle amount, but because he had to do it, he's missed the apex. And actually, I'll scratch that. Loads of drivers take this corner very differently. Quite a lot of drivers didn't like to touch this curb. I do. And I was driving this on Sunday as well, and I was even trying to use all of the curbing going over it. I find that if you get your front right over this raised curb, it can unsettle the car. And I'd have 3 laps where I'd ride the curb and it'd be beautiful. But then I'd have 1 lap where I'd ride the curb and maybe I'd just take a tiny bit too much and it'd just unsettle the car and it'd throw me out and I'll lose 2/10. So I think for consistency's sake, you don't want to take it. But you want to be where I am, which is, again, just playing forward a little bit more. We are on that curb. There is loads of grip there. It is helping the cart to go around the circuit. And then you just want to get on the power. You can see my right foot is already fully on the throttle, and we're going to let the cart all the way out. You can see the driver in front, he uses even more circuit than me, but that's because I think he took a slightly wider line. He was carrying more speed, so he's gone for this kind of long, he's traveling a further distance, but he's carrying a bit more speed while doing it. I will say when I was lapping here at Ellough Park in Club 100, and I was in a rhythm and putting in hot laps, I never really found myself going that wide through the corner. But that's possibly somewhere where I could have gained a bit more time. Again, I could still take that line, but maybe if I got on the power a little bit earlier, I could then carry that extra speed and use that extra bit of the circuit. But for the most part, and again, I'll leave links to my race videos as well, so you can watch those and see what I was doing lap on lap. But for the most part, I wasn't using that piece of tarmac. I'm a little bit more to the right-hand side of the circuit, and I'll just move forward a bit. You can see that we're both moving over to the right-hand side of the circuit at about the same time. The issue with going a little bit wider through that right-hander, as I accidentally kicked my microphone, so apologies for that, but the issue with going that little bit wider through the right-hander is the driver in front of me, he's later in moving his cart to the right-hand side of the circuit. So you can see that he's already starting to turn in for the left-hander. But there's all of this extra space on his outside that he could be using to go into that corner. So I think because he's come out a little bit wider through the right-hander, he hasn't had enough time to correctly position his car going into the left. Which, I mean, it's fine. He's carried more speed through that right-hander, but I think he sacrificed maybe too much going into this corner. So we'll just move forward a tiny bit more. He does actually get his kart pretty much all the way over to the right-hand side. So I'll take that back. He does get his kart position, but that is something that you have to be wary of. If you go all the way out through that right-hander, you might compromise yourself into this corner. And this corner is really, really important. It's probably the second most important corner for exit speed on the circuit, alongside hairpin 1. Maybe this corner is actually even more important. But going in, you can see where his car is. You can see where my car is. I think I'm a little bit more to the right. But I think what the difference is going into this corner is the driver in front was still going a little bit to the right. And the driver in front is an incredibly quick driver as well. So he was still moving a tiny bit to the right going into this corner, whereas when I'm going into the corner, I've already pulled my car over to the right and I've got it straight, which means that I have to turn my car a tiny bit less, because if his car is pointing to the right as he turns in, he's got to turn a little bit more. If my car's straight when I'm going in, I've got to turn a little bit less. So for those people who have been to T-side, it's a little bit like hairpin 1. Once you come out of those S's, if you're still pulling your car over to the right-hand side of the circuit on exit, you have to turn more going into that left hairpin. Whereas if you come out wider and then point your car in, you've got a lot less turning that you have to do in the corner itself. Second point with this corner is smooth. I've seen some drivers, KARTING Kirkham, really throwing the car in. And in fairness to him, he's quick. So it does work for some drivers. I don't think you want to do that personally. I think you want to be nice and smooth. I go on the brakes really, really gently. I don't like jumping on the brakes here because I feel like it's a very soft braking zone. It's soft. Jump on the brakes a tiny bit or ease on the brakes. Let it roll in. That's what I do here. I let it roll in, which means that there is probably some time if I was a bit more aggressive, but consistently I can do this every single lap. So we're going to slowly go on the brakes, and at this point I'm letting the kart roll. And yes, that means I'm not slowing down, I'm not speeding up. Maybe you could do a little bit of trail braking, but it means that my kart is really nice and balanced. It's super planted, and it means that I can get on the power nice and early, which you'll see with my right foot. My right foot is on the throttle, and this is something that I've said in other videos. You always want to accelerate before the apex. If you're in owner karts, chuck it in. Send it into the corner, be really late on the power. You can probably get away with that. In rental karts, in CLUB100, I don't think you quite have the power to do that. You need to carry speed through the corner. You need to get that clutch engaged as quickly as you can, which is why I get on the power nice and early. I'm taking all of this curb. If that tyre stack to the left isn't there, you can take more curb. You can fully go over this or do whatever. But in this case, the curb is there. So you get all the way over to the left that you can, and then you have to open up the car. You don't want to keep turning left because we've just got onto the power. We want to gain as much speed as we can. So to gain as much speed as we can, we have to open up the steering as much as possible, because that means that we're going to gain more speed. Then once we've gained speed, then we can start turning a bit and scrub that speed off. So we're going to let the kart come out nice and wide, all the way out that we can. Sometimes you might need to use even more of the circuit if you're carrying more speed. But in this case, this was how much I used. If you come out wider, you've got to turn a lot more for the next right-hander, and then you're going to lose loads of speed on the straight. So this is about the right amount that you want, because coming out as we wind the footage forward, we're not really moving that much to the left, right? We're not having to drag the kart back over across the circuit. We're able to keep the kart where it is, and then as we play forward, we can just get our right-hand side tyres over this little curb. It doesn't slow us down, it helps keep the kart nice and planted, and then we just go through this right-hander without losing any time, and then let the car all the way out as well to the left-hand side of the circuit. And that brings us to the end of our hot lap at Ellough Park. So hopefully now you'll be a master at Ellough Park and putting hot laps in. But I did say at the beginning of this video that I would show you how to overtake at every single corner at Ellough Park. And I wasn't lying, because it is possible. I'm not going to talk over these overtakes, I'm just going to let you guys watch and learn. Remember kids, you can try this out at home, but if you get a black flag, that's on you. Good luck.
We'll be right back.
now have all of the information you need to become an Ellough Park master and dominate every race you enter. Unless you're racing against me, of course. In that case, you're going to lose. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next karting video. Goodbye.